Chet, thank you for making me feel like a celebrity. Doesn't happen much often, so.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. If you would, just briefly speak of your academic background and your career in communication to this point.
I really wish you would have recited my vita. But since you ask, academic background, I guess one thing which I can say, because there are many ways to answer that question, is that I have never left school. And it hasn't been dull. It has been a place where one can be in the midst of ideas. I believe universities and educational institutions are places where the past and the present and the future all come together. So that's what my academic career has been like, of not ever having left school, which also means that I haven't made up my mind about everything yet, which must be a good thing, very liberating, I think.
Well, what specifically drew you to the field of communication, and for the purposes of tonight's program, how did you discover and then embrace liberating structures in your own teaching?
Well, that's such a fabulous question. What led me to the study of communication? And that's a good question because I earned my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. So there must have been some design to it. I'd say passion and interest. I used to stay up all night doing my mechanical engineering drawings. My parents thought when I was actually writing radio scripts and getting paid for them. So I guess I'll have to credit my grandfather because he was a professor of mathematics, but he also encouraged us to read and write. And so engineering and writing and talking and communicating all sort of came together. But to the specific question of what led me to embrace liberating structures, about 10 years ago, I became quite interested and involved in what some people call the science of complexity. And you know, you can read dreams and dreams about the science of complexity, but if one had to summarize the gist, as I've done for myself a few times, I would say that the science of complexity says that if you want higher quality outcomes, and especially if you're working with a group of people, as we all do in public service or in social change or organizational change. So if you want high quality outcomes, you better pay attention to the quality of relationships. And so, you know, you may invoke Martin Buber, who would simply say that goodness or badness does not reside inside of people, but goodness or badness is created in the space between people. So it's a very interactional view of life. And complexity science, it's a science, honored this principle, I think, quite well. And it provides an explanation for why things work out the way that they do, and perhaps more so why things don't work out the way we think they should. So that's my sort of interest in liberating structures which focus on the quality of interactions, given everything else being the same.
Well, thank you very much for the personal introduction to yourself. The floor is yours, as they say.
All right. Okay. Good. Let's see if this clickety-clicker works. Okay, good. Perfect. Thank you for making me feel like a celebrity. So, if you were born in my country, or if you were to visit my country, India, you would be greeted by another with a namaskar. Yeah? You can bow. And, you know, after about 20-odd years of doing namaskar day in and day out, you sometimes, you know, when you have an interest in communication, begin to ask, what is this whole deal about? You know? And quite simply put, namaskar, when you see somebody, because you can bow to yourself, but typically you bow, you know, if you're in that space. When you do namaskar, you're first saying that I see you. That in the here and the now, I see you, which means you matter. It actually goes a step beyond to say, I see the goodness in you. Not only do I see you, but I see the goodness in you. And then, I'm not sure if I need this because I think I'm already wired, although, hey, when you get a microphone, why do you want to? Chet, let me give this back to you. So I see you, and then I see the goodness in you. And then, even more importantly, I think, you go a step beyond and you bow and you say, I bow to the goodness that I see in you. And I think if one were to encapsulate the spirit of liberating structures, which is the topic of our conversation, then I see you. If you're in this room, I invite you, I welcome you, I see the goodness in what you bring, and I bow to that. That indeed is the spirit of liberating structures, I believe. So I'll begin with a namaskar. And when you do a namaskar, you cannot not get a namaskar back. Okay. I'm very proficient at making PowerPoints, as those who have been in some of my classes would attest. And I never leave home without a PowerPoint. So let's begin with gratitude. And I want to, since this is being recorded, gratitude to Keith McCandless and Henry Litmanovich, pioneers of the Liberating Structures approach. They together have systematized and codified 33 liberating structures and counting. And of course, we'll talk about what liberating structures are as we move forward. They were the people whom I met about 10 years ago, both of them. And we did a workshop, a 3-day workshop at Princeton University on complexity and HIV. And that's how I was formally introduced to the practice of liberating structures. I think that Vimeo.com is a cue to me to play a tape. See, I even have cues built into my PowerPoint. Let's see if this works. Oh, fancy. Full screen? Oh, yeah. See, I even know what buttons to press. Time for me to wipe my sweat and...
We really believe that groups are smart, organizations are smart as a whole. But the structures that are used in order to get the work done do not really give voices to most of the people.
One of the things about structure is, and process, is they usually are big and cumbersome and don't change very quickly. And we've tried to create structure that's very simple, easy to learn, is the absolute minimum required to get fabulous results.
You know, it has to be simple. It has to be the kind of thing that people can use every day.
I thought you were crazy. I was sure you were crazy, because
Yeah,
the idea
on
was
that
we're going to
crazy
go to a
note, we should
country,
stop.
work with a couple thousand-person organization, invite a slice of them from the very top,
Classes.
mostly frontline folks, do an immersion of 20 or 30 separate liberating structures.
2.5 days.
2.5 days, followed by some coaching. And we leave the country, and a transformation has been effected.
Good. And you can watch this tape. I can send you the link. So I've got plenty more slides, as you can see. And I want to make sure I get through all of them, because that's part of liberating structures. Okay, so Rob, I thought I'd put on some images of Canadian geese, given that Canada is represented in this room. So this is especially for you.
I always tear up when I see those Canadian geese.
I figured that we would create a good space between us. So why do geese fly in a V formation, is the question. And the answer is, it's the most efficient way of flying because of the drag. So if you are sort of towards the back, then you get the draft from those who are flying in front, so you expend less effort and you can go further as a group, about 70% more distance as a group than you would if you were a single goose flying on your own. Why else do geese fly in a V? Leadership, yes. What about leadership? So a goose leads the way. There is a tip. You know, the V comes to a certain convergence, and there is a leader. And leadership is rotated among the geese. So when the lead goose tires, then it goes back, and then a goose from the back moves forward to take its place. So they rotate leadership. Why else? Cooperation. And obviously the whole is greater than the sum of the parts in terms of distance covered, in terms of efficiency, in terms of ease of travel. The geese, when they are flying in a V formation, also honk and encourage others to keep up. They are communicating as they are circling. If a goose falls out of alignment, there is self-correction, because if you're out of alignment, if you're not in the V, you feel additional drag on your wings. And you know, it's like flying alone, so you get back into alignment. If a goose falls behind, then there are at least 2 or 3 geese who would stay back, and if that goose needs to rest, they would descend down and take care of each other until they are ready to join another flock. So this is very interesting behavior in terms of design, in terms of architecture, in terms of cooperation, in terms of communication, affirmation, validation, and much is happening in this space between the flying and the turn taking. Okay, good. So, that's the question. Is there anything that we can learn from geese flying in a V formation about how we design interactional structures? We are, I must confess, not very good at designing interactional architecture. And this is not any fault of ours, it's just that we don't know and we haven't learned how to design interactional architectures. So this is a challenge. I'm speaking to myself as much as I guess I'm expressing myself to you. So let's say that structures are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. You enter a classroom and I'm not surprised, 98 out of 100 times it looks exactly the way it's supposed to look, which is sort of like this. It's arranged in a certain order. It's not a V, but there are rows and columns. And you can imagine what that does in terms of the interaction that it fosters, because we love talking, as we know, to people's backs. And everybody, of course, has eyes behind their heads. And so much so that we don't even see these structures. They are so ubiquitous that we don't see them. They are invisible, or we do not see the alternative. The alternative is invisible. So here's, a structure, the presentation, which is what I'm doing, yeah? And who's in control? Because I've got a clicker. The clicker, I don't know whether I'm in control or the clicker is in control. And what am I saying to you if I am in control? That you're not, you stay quiet unless, I ask you, and listen. That's the invitation. I am the arbiter of knowledge. I know I am the sage on stage. You better listen. But of course, we know that and even if physically this doesn't manifest, physically you can be alert and be nodding and, be smiling, and, you may still have that Facebook page open, or, whatever else that keeps that smile up. So, now this is another very ubiquitous interactional structure. And, boardrooms, committee meetings, the department chair, and what's wrong with that? You are obviously chairing. So, you may call it a managed discussion, but the question is who manages? And we can take a straw poll of how many of us love to be in meetings. You wake up on Monday morning and say, I can't wait, for that meeting. So this is another structure which is very dominant. And here you can see there are aspects of control. Who controls? Which also means who doesn't control. What's the invitation? Is the invitation to participate, or is the invitation, I'll tell you, or this is even better. You know what I want, so you better, toe the line. But there are other kinds of structures too. And I guess the point is that structures matter if we are mindful, if we so choose to be mindful of the alternatives. So this is a class at the University of Texas, El Paso. I could have chosen a couple of images from some of the classes here at the Clinton School that I'm a participant in. And you can see where the desks are, yeah? Tables get in the way, or they can. And what happens when you enter a boardroom? What do you see? Big table. Can't even move it. I've actually once held discussions, all of us sitting over the board table. It's a lot of fun. Oh, figured that some of you may recognize yourself, Acadia. And I don't know, Professor Babby, thank you for coming if you also. I choose these images with Canadian geese, you know, yeah, you get the idea. Okay. So Keith McCandless and Henry Lipmanovich, and some of us who work with them, in addition to the presentation and the managed discussion or the open brainstorm, right? And we know how the open brainstorm goes, right? We say, okay, you know, open brainstorm. And that's too loose. Why? Because somebody, you know, pings, and then somebody pongs it, right? Ping pong. And, you know, the conversation may fly off in 10 different directions until, you know, somebody tries to pull it back. Yeah, and it's hard. So what Keith McCandless and Henry have done is they have developed, codified, systematized about 36 different ways of managing group interactions. So it's the same people, the same space, the same amount of time, same resources, everything is the same, but by changing the way in which the invitation is extended, the way in which configurations are shaped, you change the quality of the interactions, and then by very definition, if people feel included and think they have a voice, you have changed the quality of the outcomes. Now, we've already done one of them, you know, and you can say, oh, gee, I would have much rather had Chet introduce me. No, I shouldn't have really stolen his thunder. But we decided that we would engage in an alternative structure, which we often call the celebrity interview. And you can think about what a formal introduction does, third person, let me tell you, and you can decide, you know, who's in charge. And it's the same old, no, usually. Versus, okay, I'm going to ask you some questions, and maybe there'll be some moments of surprise, maybe. So liberating structures do lead to moments of surprise. That's our friend Henry, and I don't know if any of you can recognize where Henry and I are posing. Thank you, Mr. G, for arranging for us to be photographed. Okay, that's my cue for video. Also, it's a nice picture, I think. How are we doing on time, Chet? I don't know if I'm going to have time to get through all my slides, but... Oh, it's only 6:20? Okay, I'll like to go with 6:20. I like 6:20 better. All righty. One of the things I've learned is always Make sure you're in the pictures and in the credits. It's been a while.
What has been a big change for me is discovering and making up a few methods that really make it possible to practically include everybody that needs to be included in whatever needs to be done. And so discovering that this can be done effectively, this can be done over periods of time that are manageable, okay? That for me has been a dramatic change, you know, because it makes kind of the impossible possible, all right? And so that's, I would say that's been a big transformation, you know. So this all, what I call liberating structure, you know, this whole collection of methods that make it possible to really, you know, address any problem and find a method or a combination of methods that will be appropriate to address this particular issue in a way that will be really inclusive, so that you can really tap into that magnificent intelligence that is around you, you know, that otherwise is out of the picture, you know, and the creativity and the energy and so forth.
I'm very interested in asking you to talk a little bit about liberating structures and maybe even discuss a specific example of a liberating structure and how that helps unleash the potential of an individual or the collective intelligence of the group.
One of the things that I've seen, at least in my environment many times, and I've seen it in many other environments, is a situation where somebody important makes a presentation and gives a speech to a large audience, okay?
In the university, I think that happens a lot.
Okay, fine. So you have a, whatever, Mr. or Mrs. Important, a president or whatever.
We say sage on the stage.
Is on the stage, and there's an auditorium, and there's maybe 300 or 400 people there, you know, listening, and this thing, you know, goes on with or without slides for, let's say, 20 minutes or something like that, okay?
An hour.
And then at the end, that person stops and say, thank you for your attention. Are there any questions?
Okay. Yeah.
And then you have this sort of
pause.
silence. And very often, or most of the time, or practically all the time, nothing. And then maybe this one timid hand that said, yes, sir, or yes, I have a question. And usually that question ends up being a very innocuous kind of thing, you know? And we're not talking about reporters here, you know, we're talking about regular people. And so you have 2 or 3 questions, and then thank you very much, and then the thing is over, okay?
So what's wrong with that, Henry?
Yeah, right. What's wrong with that is that you have 300 people who had things in their head and it never came out. It stayed there. So that opportunity to really have some meaningful interaction got lost. So we can introduce a very simplest of the simplest structure in this. So instead of saying, are there any questions, you could just say, all right, now I'm finished. I'm going to suggest to you to turn to the people around you and 2 or 3 and take 5 minutes or so to discuss with the person next to you, what is it that you heard? What struck you? What was important? What questions you have? You know, what is it that was missing that you would like to hear about? Whatever it is that you think is worth talking about. Discuss this, take a few minutes, 2 or 3, and then, you know, we'll take it from there. So you do that, you give that amount of time, and I guarantee that as a result of that, when you go back to that room and tell, okay, now the various groups that they've formed, you know, what questions came from your group? you will now have a whole bunch of rich questions.
Yeah.
By just having introduced that little element, you have liberated the conversation. You have invited everybody to speak up. Not with you, they spoke up with somebody next to you, but that is the path for them. They have started speaking. They have started participating.
My sense is that those who work in a command and control environment, introducing that liberating structure can be very threatening, because now you don't know what the nature of the collective questions will be, and gee, now I'm not just the sage on the stage, but you know, I'm that apple on which everybody can shoot an arrow.
It is threatening because for the reason you would expect, because obviously when you do this, you're unleashing all those voices, and inevitably there's stuff that will come out that has been shoved under the carpet, or that are the controversial, the skeletons out of the closet, the things that are difficult to talk about are much more likely to come out. But the only thing it changes is now they are come to the surface, so now we can do something about it. They were there. They were not, they're not being created by the change in the conversation. They're now being revealed.
Which can only be a good thing if you choose to look at it as a good thing.
They're there.
They're there. They're fun.
Personally, I think it's fun.
To be, a bit out of control in some ways.
Because it's exciting. It is, something is happening. It is, it's thrilling. It's a little bit like you're on the edge. You don't know what's going to happen. You have, your stomach gets a little tight, and you're, and that's the ride. It's a little bit, like if you're skiing and you're going in a place where it's a little over your level, and you're there, so am I going to make it, or am I going to crash, or, and, but then when you come out of it okay, you say, wow.
That was thrilling.
And you're not alone. Because when you do this with a group of people, they are with you. So it's not thrilling for you, it's thrilling for them.
Thought I'd just let the credits roll. Okay. Okay. So, interactional structures. There are always these 5 components that are present. So you may think of a presentation. There's space, there's a physical arrangement, usually rows and columns, sage on stage. Participation, well, in the case of a presentation, you're saying, gee, I'm the one who matters, you listen to me. Configurations, well, it's one big blob of people. Time allocation, well, all the time belongs to me, maybe some for questions. And the conceptual framework is, I have the agenda and I'm going to go with it. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, presentations have value, as you can see. I'm feeling good about being on stage, as I should. But let's do it's one thing to talk about liberating structures, but it's yet another to see if we can practice them. So I would encourage all of you to rise, if you can, and forget your chairs. Oh, and I need my... You may pay attention to the question that's... So the invitation, this is the invitation to you. Think of a time when you were in a group setting, in one of those meetings that you were so joyously looking forward to, and your experience in that group setting was one that you felt invited, involved, affirmed, appreciated. And of course, I'm sure you can think of 1,000 different situations such as those. We only ask you to think of one. And as you think of that situation, we'd like you to think of the enabling conditions. What happened in that group interaction which made it possible for you to feel that you were invited and affirmed and involved and validated. So this is the way we'll do it. You should pay no attention to the chairs that there are in this room. Feel free to, climb over them or work around them. When I ding the bell, as I have just done as a demonstration, I would like you to, in the spirit of the Canadian geese and in the spirit of speed dating, when I ding the bell, I'd like you to walk up to somebody whom you don't know. Or if you know everybody in the room, walk up to the person whom you know the least. And let this not be the person sitting next to you, because in all probability, the person sitting next to you, you know. So it's okay to look for the person who's the farthest from you, whom you don't know, and you can raise your hand and say, I need to talk to you because I don't know you and I'd really like to get to know you. And you will have 2 minutes in that dyad as you pair up to discuss what that situation was and what made it possible in that situation for you to feel involved. Yeah, makes sense? Simple enough? I ding the bell, you find somebody whom you don't know, who is as far away as possible from you, circle around the chairs. If you want to just sit and say, hey, find me, that's fine too. And so find a partner whom you do not know or know the least. 2 minutes total sharing time. You can divide it, unless you wanted to hog all 2 minutes. 1 minute each. And then after 2 minutes, I'm going to ding the bell again, and then you're going to find another person. And the same rules apply. Somebody who's not known to you. And then after 2 minutes, I'll ding the bell again, and you find another person. Yeah? Sounds good? Yeah? Let's give it a try. So 1 minute of silence. 1 minute of silence so that you can... Silence is a very underused liberating structure. So 1 minute of silence, I'll ding the bell, and then you go. And this will take 6 or 7 minutes total. But we would have unleashed about 200 conversations in those 6 or 7 minutes. me just unleash. Find another partner.
How are you? Good. Good to see you.
Good. Good to see you too. Find another partner, find another partner. Last round, find another partner. You may return back to your seats. So with liberating structures, you can only talk about a liberating structure with reference to what the alternative would have been. So an alternative would have been that we would have taken 6 minutes and I would have posed the question, the same question, and I would have, gotten a few responses. And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. It's one way of using, the energy and the wisdom of those who are in the room. But by doing it in 3 rounds, and by giving you a structured guiding question, we were able to mathematically, as you can imagine, unleash howsoever many people there are times 6 conversations, if you include a conversation as being one who's talking and one who's listening. Okay. So, just very quickly, maybe encourage 3 very quick reports based on what you heard, not based on what you said. What were some of the conditions which enabled people to be affirmed? And if you do 5, you can really get about 80% of the wisdom. But let's do 3. Let's go with 60% of the wisdom that emerged. Dr. Babby.
Physical configuration seemed to come up with each one. Sitting in a circle.
Physical configuration. So people were talking about how the geography of the room was structured, either enabled or did not enable. In this case, it was enable the conditions for. Okay, very good. And did you hear circle or not so specific, but anyway. Okay, what else? Yes.
The idea of being invited in an equal participant before you even get to the setting.
Now that you have a mic, never miss an opportunity to hear your own voice.
Thank you. The idea of being invited beforehand and being a participant in the whole planning and having ownership before you even get to the meeting so that everyone's engaged once they get there and on sort of the same page that you have productive and excited conversation.
Great. You're even talking about the value of a pre-invitation, which also means that if you are, what is it that people need to do before they come together in a physical space, and whether they are, whether they feel invited or, I'm going to get you in this meeting. Okay, let's do one more. Michael, what did you hear? I know you were just lunging for the microphone, so I preempted that lunge.
Absolutely not. What I heard is that people felt affirmed and comfortable in low context situations, meaning every single time it was never at work. It was always outside of work. So really? People definitely felt more comfortable in less formal situations.
Wow, because when we do come to work, we leave we bring our bodies, but we leave our hearts and our souls
exactly.
At home. Yeah, Good. I'm glad that people even felt comfortable to articulate that. Yeah, maybe not in the way that I've done, but the sentiment. Okay, good. You get the idea? How speed networking works, how we were like a flock of Canadian bees. How was it for you, Rob? Good. Okay, so let's just analyze this a bit. Oh no. Okay, so structure of the impromptu networking. We analyzed the presentation, no? Space, how is space used? We invite you to stand up, not sit down, face to face, it's open, no? Participation, everybody at once, in parallel, equal time, equal opportunity. Configurations pairs, and we said strangers, preferably. And why is that? Because of the power of loose connections. Because the quality of the interactions, the quality of the relationships are key. So imagine if you're going to be in a class for 16 weeks, 3 times a week, what that might do if you are talking to those whom you don't know, because we ordinarily only talk to those whom we know. Time allocation, yeah, get the idea? And the conceptual framework was one appreciative question, which is, think of a time when. Now, you can modify this in any which way. And this is just one structure, and there are 33 of them, and they work in different configurations, which means you can use them in different ways. And then 33, you can decide what the permutations and combinations can be if you wish to combine them, no? Okay. So, what we are going to do, and Chet, with your help, if we may have, and Corey, your help, if we may have 6 chairs in the middle, empty chairs, and I would say that the city of Little Rock probably has the highest density, you won't believe this, the highest density of liberating structures practitioners in the world. It's the truth. And not just at the Clinton School of Public Service, but in the boundaries that go beyond it. So I am going to invite any 5 users of the Liberating Structures method toolkit, and I can already look at a few people. I think I'm seeing Dr. Owen, Rick. I think I see Dr. Lindquist, Marie, Dr. Ulmer. I know we've honored the Canadian geese, but let's honor you. I think I see Acadia. Yeah. And let's do at least one class 8. Am I looking at Mara? I am, while Angie hides. And why don't we, for a little fun, invite Melanie too? I did say 6. Okay, so this is another liberating structure, which we call a fishbowl. So imagine that our 6 friends who have a certain user experience are in a fishbowl, and we are all admirers outside. While they talk amongst themselves, our only task is to listen. So we all have a role, and that is to listen. Because a fishbowl typically begins inside the bowl and then goes outside. So you are equally participating if you are outside of the fishbowl. You would use a fishbowl. Now, I could have just presented you the summary statistics of what the experiences have been here in Little Rock with this community of practice, no? Because we are very good at that. We speak on behalf of people, right? Let me tell you about poverty, no? Or let me tell you about HIV. We speak on behalf of people. A fishbowl is to bring the authentic user voices into the mix in a safe environment. So here are 6 practitioners. Fishbowl begins. I'm going to ding the bell, and they will take it away. And the invitation to them is to talk about their experiences and struggles and ahas and joys with using liberating structures. And let's give them 6 minutes. Okay? Starting now. And yes, a microphone would be good.
So I'm relatively new at this, having attended a workshop in Seattle with Keith and Henry and Arvind and several others, 3 of the people in the Fishbowl here. But I've been using it at my workplace, and one of the things that really strikes me is how it could be applied to many areas of my life, but it's changed the way that I think about my work and the people that I work with. And I've thought a lot more about them and about how we can make progress together in this context.
Rick, would you say who you are and where you work? And that's an invitation to all our participants.
You're outside the fishbowl, aren't you?
I know, I know. I have just broken structure, and I'm guilty as charged.
I'm supposed to be talking to people here. I'm a psychiatrist. I work in research administration and research at the VA hospital and UAMS here. So I've been just applying it in one area of my work in research administration so far.
I'm Marie Lindquist, and I am the Director of Field Service Education here at the Clinton School. And when I started teaching here 5 years ago, I think I was really struggling to find ways to really involve students in the dialogue. I didn't feel like I wanted to run a classroom with, I have the knowledge that you need to know from me. So I was looking for techniques to try to change that. And when I met Dr. Singhal and learned about liberating structures, it gave me some wonderful ways to do that I've been using and exploring. But more recently, I've been kind of digging into the values that come along with the liberating structures and thinking about how to incorporate that even more in how I work and how I think about my work. And so that's been kind of the new area. I had a great conversation with my assistant director recently and kind of changed some of the ways we were thinking about doing things because we were just talking about the values of liberating structures and how to incorporate that more in how we do our work. So that's my current thoughts.
My name is Acadia Rower. I'm a former Clinton School student and now a community organizer here in Little Rock. My experience with liberating structures in Little Rock has been really interesting because I'm always surprised how few people have had really dynamic group experiences in their workplace or even in nonprofit work. And so I'm just thinking of 2 particular experiences. Both incidentally were on groups that are working in the South Main area, which a lot of you know has been the center of a lot of development and attention in Little Rock recently. But both groups, I've been struck mostly with how liberating structures is able to really levelize relationships between people. I mean, you'll see a community member and the head of the neighborhood association or the head of a large corporation talking one-on-one about very personal things. And I just think that is something that doesn't happen in our society often enough and really could lead to some interesting and new insights that could help our community.
Nice. My name is Melanie, and I work for 2 organizations that both provide professional development to people who work with people with disabilities. And Liberating Structures has really just changed the whole way I think and approach professional development. I used to, and I laugh about myself, that I used to say, okay, I've got a topic. What am I going to put on my PowerPoint slides? And that was the starting point. And now one of my favorite structures is the storyboard. And so I start with a storyboard of the presentation. And I'll just start with, what is my purpose? What are the purposes? What do I want to achieve here? And then think about how to approach that, how to achieve that. And sometimes the answer is a presentation and a PowerPoint. I haven't totally abandoned it. Although I did challenge myself to go for about 3 months without a PowerPoint, and it was pretty liberating. But then, there are other times when the purpose is achieved by something totally different, either one of the liberating structures or something very different. And it has really, I think, improved the depth of the interactions that I have with the people that are there with me.
My name is Mara D'Amico, and I am a current student at the Clinton School, and I'm also the Student Government Association president here. And like Rick mentioned, I am new to Liberating Structures. We just had our first class with Dr. Singhal fall semester, where we began learning about and using liberating structures in class. And it was something that I just grasped onto immediately. In my experience with facilitating and leading, I don't like to just stand up in the front of the room and, you know, run a meeting like that. I think it should be participatory and everyone should be engaged. So I'd used some liberating structures before, but didn't, I guess, have a name for them. So it was really great to delve deeper and look at the whole menu of liberating structures and think about how they can be adapted for different purposes. So in the Student Government Association meetings that we've had this year, instead of just saying, well, this is the business that we're going to cover, really trying to solicit feedback from everyone who's in the room, not just ask a few people to raise their hands. So I've seen the power that liberating structures can have there, and it's really changed the way that I approach leading, facilitating, and also learning, and I don't really plan on ever going back. Mara.
I'm Rob Ulmer, and I'm the chair of the communication department at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And so I administer a department. I teach classes in leadership and risk and crisis communication and do research in risk and crisis communication, so terrorism, disasters, things of that nature. And so Liberating Structures has been very instructive just in the de facto kind of structures that we begin with, questioning those, questioning who we're including in the kinds of decisions, the quality of decisions that we want to make. And in the kind of work that I do departmentally, I think much more about relationships, the quality of those relationships and what that has the potential to produce. And in the classroom, I think differently about my role. I think a lot more about how students learn and the multiple ways they can learn from each other, from their experiences, from myself, and how much more I can learn from them. And in applied research contexts, the liberating structures have been very, very instructive about how to gain community buy-in, how to gain understanding and collective movement on issues. So, is life changing appropriate? Too small, not big enough for you, Dr. Singhal? But these are, it really does get you thinking differently about the way you lead your own life. So,
I do liberating structures on the dinner table now. I'm doing fish bowls with my two boys. A big round of applause for our... Now, a fishbowl technically, should go on for as long as it needs to go on. And, as you could see, we interrupted that, but because we are also, guided by certain time structures. But I would like one or two people on the outside to, chip in, and may I invite Greg to add whatever you may wish to?
I, especially with work, from what I was listening to with the Fishbowl and from working closely with Acadia and Mara on many different projects, I can never walk into a space and think of it as one thing now. I know that any space can be morphed into a learning environment, casual meeting, an occasion for people just to learn from each other, and it doesn't have to be, it can be anywhere. So that's my favorite thing about liberating structures.
Okay, and just to balance the room, let's go to Matt here, because he was lunging for the microphone, and I sensed it.
As a man of few words, I would say that it provides a space
So we'll wrap up in 2 or 3 minutes. And this is, you know, a guidance to me in terms of time. We invite you to keep sitting there because it's lovely, I think, to be swimming in a fishbowl. And now, one of the things I have stopped doing, and you know, I think word has gotten around, the president of my university has learned about this, that Singhal is not holding his office hours in his office, but he is holding office hours somewhere. And she's okay with it. In fact, she talks about this, I think. And you can imagine what office hours are like. You probably have hosted office hours in your office, or if you're a faculty member, or have, you know, gone to meet a faculty member during their office hours. You know, think about the space, think about whose space it is. You usually are there if, you know, you are in trouble, or you know, need to plead, or you know, whatever the case may be. Sometimes we do go in for a healthy conversation, but the structure is such that it's one person at a time. No? It's serial. And would you bring your sister or your boyfriend or your mother to a faculty member's office hours? I mean, God forbid, you know, that were to happen, because such shouldn't happen in universities or anywhere else. We here at the Clinton School have office hours at the River Market food court, and you can see Nicole, you're there. And Angie, you're there too. And do I see Allie? Yes, Allie's there. I'm there, posing, as I should. And Susie, we see you. And Earl was the photographer, so thank you, Earl. And the image below is at UTEP. This was taken on Monday. I teach Monday nights at UTEP, and 2 hours before my class, I'm holding office hours. And, you know, anybody can stop in. And usually people don't just come, they bring their friends and family, and people come and go, and we end up talking about a whole host of things which we otherwise won't do. So may I encourage a few people who have been identified, who are here, like Nicole and Allie and Angie, and Jenna, where are you? Jenna, and Susie, maybe you can also chip in terms of what did you see? What did you observe? So why do you come to office hours?
Did you buy us coffee? Yeah, free coffee. Just kidding. I wasn't. I was being
That too, you know, incentives are good.
I don't know if the microphone. You want me to talk in the one that...
I think for me, it's an opportunity to see you and spend time with you. We don't get you very much.
Oh, that's
and
true.
So, you know, we all love you. And, but I think for me, it's a very low-key, low-stress, it's a smaller group, but really to have more access to you, really, and it's just really nice to have these really great conversations that just happen. It's, I don't know, it's the craziest thing. It just happens. A lot of times it's about class stuff or extensions from class. A lot of times it's just what's happening in our lives. You know, usually ask, there's always a structure or a question that starts the whole thing. But it's just this really cool, fluid, always changing dynamic conversation. People pop in and pop out, and like you said, they bring people with them, and you guys joined us. I'd be interested to hear what it looked like to you as an outsider. Not that you're an outsider, but yeah. So that's what for me. It's just it's a social time, but it's also academic time. and I like that.
Good. Great.
For me, it was a very large leveling factor because you are the professor, and that particular afternoon, the students were perhaps the professor. They were sharing their personal insights on their lives and some about the class, and just relaxed, and I think there was a sense of equality, and it was very enlightening, and it was a beautiful experience for us to be honored to be part of the group. It was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and I can say that I've had a great experience because, and like Jenna said, it's so different. You never know what we're going to talk about. Sometimes he teaches inadvertently, and then other times it's just therapeutic. But he's also very willing to break off. You know, if you have a situation with whatever's going on in your life, you just say, hey, can I have a private word with you? And he does. And it's not awkward. I mean, you usually just take your free coffee, walk over into a corner, enjoy this beverage, and just have a nice conversation. And so it's great because you still get the one-on-one time that you need if you need it, but it's never imposed. And otherwise, it's just pretty nice.
And the rest of us that are still at the table are still having great conversations.
And just to wrap it all up, it's almost like an informal picnic with our professor, and everyone brings their own nuggets to the table. We have the intellect, we have very good food, we have tasty desserts, and we just have these wonderful conversations, and it's really nice to get to know him more on a personal level, and I think he gets to know us as well, and to get to know our eating habits and what we do on the weekends. And
hot sauce.
Oh gosh. It's a time that we all look forward to, and just so you know, we spend almost all day Thursday together. We're together 9 to 5, and then on Fridays we're together from 8:30 to 12, and then we come back for the office hours from 2 to 4. So, yeah, we love each other. So it's a really, really good time. We look forward to those picnics on Fridays.
Thank you, Nicole. And Angie is eager to.
Well, I won't say anything new, but I'm usually curious about certain things that come up from class that I don't want to waste everybody's time to talk about in class. So I go there to get some clarification, and out of those discussions, we get to talk about other things. We get to network, then he connects us with other people outside the world. Of course, some of you don't know me, but I'm one of the people coordinating the Liberating Structures over the phone, so I'll invite you in some formula so you can join our conversation with Keith and Henry. But generally, that's kind of a relaxing moment for us.
Okay, thank you. Did I invite anybody else? No, okay. Well, thank you very much. So in conclusion, I guess structures matter. And, you know, structures can constrain as well as liberate. And a little more mindfulness about the interactional architecture, space, participation, invitation, configuration, time allocation, can provide you with an opportunity to use the same people, same space, the same classroom, the same amount of time, and by altering those micro interactional features, change the quality of the interactions, and by definition then the quality of the outcomes. No time left for questions. If you have questions, just, you know, have a liberating structure, and but I do believe we have time. I'm okay with questions. Do we have time for questions? Yes? Okay. So let's say that the session is formally closed. So for those of us who need to leave, you know, please feel free to do so. And those of us who want to stay, after 2 minutes, we can continue with the questions. How about that? Okay. Thank you.